For a long time, if you looked out over the vast tropical canopy of Central America, it was easy to see it as empty wilderness, millions of square miles of thick green forest, hiding only a few scattered, isolated ruins. But recently, archaeologists started scanning the landscape from the air using a technology called LiDAR. It fires laser pulses from an aircraft to map the ground below, allowing us to strip away the trees without touching a single leaf. Looking at this topographical data, we can see exactly what's hiding under that green layer. Thousands of new foundations, expansive urban centers, raised highways, and intricate large-scaled farms. The Maya inhabited a sprawling, interconnected landscape of urban centers and highways. We walked right by this civilization for decades, simply because we couldn't see the full picture through the trees. Take the ancient town of Kiuic in the Yucatan. Around the 9th century, this was a thriving hub. Architects and masons were fully employed, and the local king was pouring immense wealth into an upgraded 15-building residential palace. But when researchers cleared the rubble around this palace, they found scaffolding stones still resting against the second-story walls. The builders had laid out the blocks for the next phase of construction, but they never put them up. All work just stopped. Inside the nearby estates, ceramic vessels and plates weren't smashed or dropped in a panic. They were carefully set aside against the interior walls, neatly tucked out of the way. There are no arrowheads or spear points in the streets, no signs of a massacre or a frantic escape. The residents of Kiuic tidied up their homes, packed up what they could carry, and walked away in an organized departure. They fully intended to come back. To understand why they left, we have to look at who was actually living in these hills. Right above Kiuic sits an enormous estate archaeologists nicknamed the Stairway to Heaven. In ancient Central America, stone houses were almost exclusively for royalty. But here, researchers found 22 large stone buildings belonging to plantation owners, and even secondary houses for skilled workers were built of stone. This level of luxury suggests that wealth had spread to nearly half of the population, the very first evidence of a prosperous middle class in the Americas. This schematic shows their primary survival tool. This region has almost no surface rivers or lakes, and it dries out completely for 6 months every year. To survive, they bored through the limestone bedrock and carved out these underground chambers, lining them with thick stucco to make them waterproof. They called them Chultuns. They engineered the entire hilltop, the sloping patios, the plazas, the rooftops, to catch the heavy seasonal rains. They funneled every drop of rainwater into these high-capacity cisterns. A single estate could hold tens of thousands of gallons, supporting a whole community through the dry season. Deep inside sacred caves in the region, paintings dating back to around 100 BC show that this society had been successfully managing this exact harsh landscape for centuries. These people had immense wealth, secure food from valley farms, and brilliant hydrological engineering. Giving up a comfortable estate is an extreme measure. Something powerful had to push them out. Soil samples reveal the arrival of extreme droughts, lasting between 3 and 20 years. These were not standard dry seasons. They were decades-long shortages that occurred repeatedly throughout the 9th century. The Chultun system was brilliant for a 6-month dry spell, but it couldn't stretch across a decade. When we map this extended drought timeline against their water storage capacity, the reserves eventually hit zero. But an empty cistern was only half the problem. Right around this same time, a new political ideology swept through the northern cities, the cult of Quetzalcoatl, marked on their civic buildings by these intertwined feathered serpent carvings. This was a demanding political ideology that required local kings to undergo grueling, painful initiations to gain power. It fractured the ruling class, creating intense competition between leaders who bought into the new system and those clinging to traditional Maya rule. This sprawling population found itself fighting an unwinnable battle on 2 fronts. They were facing an escalating, extreme environmental crisis, just as their political leadership became hopelessly divided. When the cisterns finally ran dry, the residents of Kiuic made a highly rational decision. They packed their essentials, stored the rest, and migrated to find water. They had survived droughts before, and this coordinated departure was a calculated survival strategy. Resettling a forest-choked city requires heavy logistics, clearing hectares of growth, repairing damaged Chultuns, and redistributing land. But the political rivalries triggered by the new feathered serpent ideology had paralyzed the administration. With the elite factions focused on their own power struggles, there was no one left to organize the labor force required for a large-scale return. Without a population to maintain them, these advanced engineering marvels and grand estates simply sat empty. Year by year, the tropical vines crept over the limestone, burying the cities under a wave of green. The Maya built a complex, wealthy society, but their empty cities leave us with a stark historical reality. Even the most brilliant engineering cannot save a civilization when extreme environmental stress collides with a broken political system.